Hi everybody, it's Emma from Misfit Gardening, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about probably some of the more uncomfortable things that we have to deal with being a small homesteader, especially when we're raising chickens for these. So I want to give you guys a heads up. I'm going to be talking about something that's a bit controversial, and you know, if you're not cool with it, then you know, I really recommend not to continue watching. I'm actually going to be talking about culling my birds, so stay tuned if you want to and find out a bit more. If it's not for you, don't worry, I'm not gonna be upset by it if you don't want to watch. Just so everybody's aligned, I am not going to be showing the killing of any of my birds. I will however be showing some of the implements that we use, so stay tuned and find out a bit more. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm not going to be showing you the actual culling process. I'm just going to talk you through some of the tools and a little bit on why we had to do it. So we had to cull Ranger, or Mother Clucker as I call her. There was a couple of reasons. So the first thing is she's been broody for a long time, and we've been unable to break that broodiness, and a lot of blogs and things that I've been reading were saying, well, just give her fertilized eggs and let those hatch, and then that'll break her out of her broodiness. Well, living in a suburban setting, I can't do that. If I have roosters, then I've got a bit of a problem because I'm not allowed to have roosters. I'm only allowed to have 6 chickens at any one time. So that's some of the constraints that I have living in an urban setting. Because she was being broody, she wouldn't let any of the other chickens get to the nest boxes to lay. So we started finding eggs in really random places, and then the egg production from all of the birds stopped, and we had several days where we had no eggs at all. Now that's a bit of a problem for us living in an urban setting, because you know, these chickens have to pay their way. You know, I'm relying on them for a source of protein in my diet. I don't like to supplement from the grocery store, and we're trying really hard to be very self-sufficient. And you know, in a larger setting where you know you have more birds, you don't really notice, you know, a couple of eggs and things. So when you have a small flock like what I do, a drop in egg production is incredibly noticeable. Obviously, for us, there's 3 of us and we use at least 3 eggs a day, so we estimated that we would probably want about 6 chickens, because we know sometimes not all of them lay every day, so we wanted to make sure that we had a buffer. Well, because Mother Clucker was getting so broody, she was preventing the others from laying. Everybody stopped laying. We had days with no eggs, and the ones that we did had, because we always have a bit of an excess, we've now gone through. So we had to really evaluate what our options were. So we started doing a lot of reading about how to break a broody hen, and there's lots of different ways that they recommend, from putting frozen water bottles into the nest box and underneath them, and we did that for well over a week and that didn't work. Other people advocate a chicken jail, which is like a box that you put them in that's got like wire on the flooring so they can't get comfortable and sit down, and because of the cool air circulating over their bottom area, like the belly and everything, that's supposed to break their broodiness. Well, my husband looked at me and was like, I'm not faffing about building a chicken jail for one chicken, which is now affecting the entire flock. So we had to make a decision that for the better of the rest of the flock that we were going to cull her. Now we've had to already cull one bird here, and that was because she was being heavily pecked upon, and they basically cannibalized and pecked her to death. It was the kindest thing to do with some of the wounds that she had, so we ended up culling her. But one thing that I would like to point out, that we really don't take this decision very lightly. It took a couple of weeks of us really talking and debating, between myself and my husband, what we really wanted to do. And because it was my stepson's chicken, we also had to involve him in the conversation about what he wanted to do. And it was a very difficult conversation to have, especially since we've named all the chickens as well. So we have that kind of pet mentality with them. Wait for the aeroplane to go past. Sorry about that, but because we sat down and discussed it as a family, it was a little bit easier. So last Sunday we had to cull her. Now before that, we wanted to make sure that we had things all ready to go, and everything was good, because with the other bird that we had to take care of, we had to do it in a slightly different manner than what we did with Mother Clucker. So my husband found a set on Amazon, and I'm going to put the link in the description so you can check it out. But what it came with was this cone, which is called a killing cone. It came with a knife and a scabbard, and it also came with a chicken plucker that you attach into a drill bit, which I'm going to show you afterwards, and just kind of explain what we did a little bit step by step. So we went with a killing cone option because we've been looking at what a lot of other urban homesteaders do. We felt that this was going to be something that was going to be a lot cleaner. It was going to be quieter, and we don't really want the old chicken with its head cut off running around here or anything like that. And we want to be able to dispatch our animals as humanely as possible, because they trust us, and we've been caring for them and making sure that they've had the best life possible. So we went with this option. As you can see, it's a piece of sheet metal that we've attached to the silver birch tree here. Does come with a knife. We did go ahead and sharpen it already. The only downside is that I found it in the dishwasher, so somebody put it in the dishwasher and it's rusted up a little bit, so we're just going to have to take care of that. But this was really useful, and it made the whole process go a lot smoother. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here because I had to work on Sunday, so I wasn't around. But my husband, kind of explained what happened, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase. So we kept Mother Clucker away from the other chickens, and we actually placed her in one of the dog kennels that we had, so she was completely on her own, and we didn't feed her or give her any water. And that was overnight because we wanted to make sure that her system had flushed up. We don't want anything really in the stomachs, because if we accidentally rupture anything, we're going to taint the meat, and that's obviously not what we wanted to do. So my husband's recommendation was that we not feed her, so everything can kind of work through your system, kind of like if you've got to go in for surgery. We made sure that the dog's kennel was very comfortable. It had, bedding and stuff in there, hay, straw, all that kind of good stuff. So, there was things for her to kind of snuggle up and do. But after we kind of segregated her and we looked her over, we noticed something that we hadn't noticed before, and that was that all of the other chickens have been pecking at her as well. So she kind of had sort of wounds all around her face from the other chickens pecking at her from, you know, them trying to lay and kind of fighting. And I must say, at the very beginning when she was broody, it wasn't too much of a problem because, you know, the other chickens would kind of chase her out of the nest box area, and it didn't make too much of a problem, although we did kind of open up the nest box one morning to check them, and there was, you know, one chicken on top of the other chicken trying to lay, so that was kind of interesting. And even though we have 4 nest boxes that are free for our chickens, they prefer to use one, so they kind of argue amongst themselves about it. So we segregated her from it, and the other flock members and stuff just kind of went to bed that night, and, you know, didn't really notice anything different. In the morning, and we did this quite early in the morning because we obviously have neighbours around us, and we didn't want anybody to kind of be peering over the fence and then freaking out about what we were doing. So we did do it early before people were out and about. So what happens? You put the chicken into the cone, and it kind of keeps the feathers together, and they kind of feel, you know, sort of safe because there's a bit of pressure on them. And you pull the head through here. Now it's quite a wide opening, and actually we were kind of concerned because it was so wide, but that was actually okay. She didn't fall through it or anything. And then my husband used the knife that came with it all, cut the main artery. After a couple of minutes, you know, with her being upside down before he cut the artery, she actually goes unconscious, and then he cut the artery, and then his term for it was pithing the brain, which is where you would take the knife tip through the mouth, because the beak will be open, and you just kind of puncture straight up into the roof of the mouth, and that makes sure that the deed is definitely done. So I think all in all, my husband said it was seconds, like within a couple of seconds it was done, and she was taken care of. And then we had to deal with her carcass. So I want to take you over to the other side of the garden just to kind of show you what we did. After she's dead, we then had to scald the body in hot water. So we dip it into boiling water, get a big stock pot to do that, and then we also plunge the body into ice cold water, and that helps the plucking process. What also helped the plucking process was one of these, and this is a chicken plucker, and this came with the kit. The drill didn't. The drill's ours. Definitely recommend a corded drill because you're not going to lose any power in you know, the plucking process, depending on the size of the bird. And these are like rubberized fingers, and of course this spins really quickly and just lifts and pulls off the feathers. It does make a mess. You know, you do get feathers going all over the place, and that was another reason why we did it very early in the morning, because, you know, we would have time to be able to clear things up, and, you know, our neighbours aren't really going to know. You know, that, and we didn't want the dogs kind of coming out and chewing on feathers and everything else. So we raked everything up, all the feathers and stuff, and we put them in this bokashi bin. After we'd plucked her, we then had to process her, or gut her, remove the feet and all that, the head and everything else. That also all went into this bokashi bin, and the reason for that is because you can. And you can, the great thing about bokashi is that you can compost raw meat, cooked meat, dairy, bones, and a whole heap of other stuff. So that's what we did. We put it all into the bokashi bin. We then cooked the chicken. We had chicken dinner that night. If we do it again, we're definitely going to let the meat rest for a couple of days in the refrigerator before eating, because it was pretty tough. And, you know, the flavour was great, but just the actual texture wasn't great. So definitely recommend let it sit for a couple of days in the fridge before you go ahead and cook it up. And everything that we didn't eat from you know, the bones and the carcass and everything else, we made into stock. So we've got stock that's been canned, and then all the cooked bones, meat and everything else, that also went into the bokashi bin. So everything that we couldn't eat or use is in the bokashi bin. After it's been in here and the bokashi bin's been filled, it's going to go in the compost heap, and then in a couple of weeks it'll be compost. What we're going to do with the compost? Well, it's going to go in the garden, and it's going to feed the garden, and the garden feeds us. It also feeds the chickens. So, you know, nothing has been wasted here. And although I still feel very bad that this was the route that ultimately we took, you know, we've now got full egg production back. And we're looking at getting some more chickens, specifically as meat birds, that we can raise, and then we can make sure that we've got some meat throughout the winter. Now, having a small homestead does mean that you're gonna have a relatively you know, high throughput of things. For us, you know, the chickens are really only as good as, you know, they're laying. If they're not laying anymore, they're not saving us any money at all. And, you know, we need to think hard about what it is that we're doing, and that's part of the reason why we started this process of homesteading where we live right now, because I would hate to be, you know, on a 5-acre plot, you know, where we ultimately want to be living, and you know, I can't do it. I can't feed the family because I'm not willing to cull the birds that I've raised. So this is one of those things where, you know, I'm really grateful that my husband spent summers when he was a kid in Texas helping out on farms and things. I'm also really grateful that when I was a kid, I helped my grandfather with skinning of rabbits and, you know, gutting things and all that sort of stuff, because I'm able to help with that. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have to you know, do the actual culling myself. I'm going to have to, and for that I'm definitely not going to be naming my birds from now on, because it's going to be very difficult for me when we have to, you know, deal with the rest of the flock that are here. So that's a little bit about what's you know, homesteading life is kind of like, and I'd really like to know what your thoughts are. And, you know, I'd like to know if you guys have, you know, whether you've had to go through this yourself, what your thoughts were, what methods and things you found have worked. I know a lot of people are not going to be very happy with the choice that we've made, but I'm standing firm on that. You know, I've used absolutely everything possible, and, you know, really, as a meat eater, without death there would be no meat to eat, and at least I know that I've raised my animals well. They've been fed the best possible feed that I can get my hands on. I like to use a fully certified organic feed, and it is quite expensive. You know, they've had, you know, all this space to, you know, forage about on, and they get treats and things from the garden. So I know that, you know, on the whole, they've had a very happy life. And, you know, I gotta say it, meat is pretty delicious next to some potatoes and veg. So, you know, like I said, go ahead and leave your comments at the bottom. I'd really like to know what your thoughts are. Until next time, I'm Emma from Misfit Gardening. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.